Hi, I'm Dr. Robin Koslowitz, YouTube's post-traumatic parenting expert. Today we're going to talk about dealing with narcissistic relatives, toxic bosses, people from your past who have elements of narcissism in their personality, and how to understand why they have such a major impact on us and what to do about it, especially as it impacts us as parents. But first, if you like this content, if you've been wondering how to deal with narcissistic relatives as a post-traumatic parent, click subscribe below so you never miss another episode. Let me know in the comments if there are more questions, if there are more topics that you want to hear about when it comes to dealing with narcissistic relatives. So, when we're talking about narcissistic people, particularly when we grew up with a narcissistic person in our past, very often we wonder, how can I persuade this narcissistic person to see things through my lens? And very often post-traumatic parents will come into my practice asking, how do I persuade this person? How do I get my ex-husband to see this? How do I get my ex-mother-in-law to understand this? How do I get my older sibling to understand this part of the story? How can I get them to listen? What words should I use? Let's understand very carefully that you're never going to get someone to believe, understand, think about something that goes against their own self-interest. Mark Twain once said, "Tell me where a man gets his corn pone and I'll tell you what his opinions are." You are never going to get a narcissistic person to believe that the way they treated you was abusive. You are never going to get a narcissistic person to believe that they have any responsibility for anything when it comes to how they treated you. Because for the narcissistic person, narcissism is a defense. It's an ego defense that Freud really elaborated on, and many of his followers, his students, really fleshed out even more. Narcissism is a defense of deep down inside, that person feels very, very, very small. They really feel powerless and small. Let's think of the Wizard of Oz, right? So remember how at the Wizard of Oz, the first time Dorothy meets the wizard, and the wizard and she sees this big face and billowing green smoke, and the wizard says, "I am the great and powerful Oz." And Dorothy's kind of cowering in fear, and everything, the sound effects, the smoke and mirrors, the noises, the booms are all designed to intimidate. The room is very big and it's designed to make you feel very small, right? Later on in the movie, much later, when Dorothy comes back from her journey of self-discovery, which is what the Wizard of Oz is really about, there she starts confronting the great and powerful Oz, and her little dog Toto pulls back the curtain. And there's a tiny little shrunken old man sitting behind, and he's frantically pumping levers and using a steering wheel and trying to get the sound effects up again. And he says, "Pay no attention to the man behind the curtain." Why? Because deep down inside the narcissist is the man behind the curtain, the little shrunken old man who is not Oz, the great and powerful. He's just a little old man. And many narcissistic people do that. They know, probably on a very unconscious level, they don't realize it consciously, but deep down, they know there's this tiny little man behind the curtain who's very weak and very not powerful and very ordinary, but they need to project, "I am Oz, the magnificent and powerful," because they feel very, very much not magnificent and very, very, very much not powerful. So if you try to get them to see that they're not perfect, you're pulling away the curtain. You become an existential threat that has to be annihilated because you cannot pull away the curtain, which means, how do I get a narcissistic person to understand that they've harmed me? You can't. So don't even try. They will never understand that, because anyone who can understand that is not a narcissistic person. A narcissistic person can never take responsibility for the tiniest thing they did wrong. Because if they take responsibility for the tiniest thing they did wrong, then the man behind the curtain comes out and everybody sees it. The illusion unravels. So they never can take responsibility. Even if you say to them, I asked for no sugar in my coffee and you put sugar in my coffee, they'll say, you always used to like sugar. Because even the tiniest mistake, they can't accept that they made. You did not say no sugar. You said that you do want sugar. And then what starts to happen is you start thinking, am I crazy? Like, you're saying this with such force. Maybe I did say I want sugar. Did I make a mistake? Did I by mistake say I do want sugar when I don't want sugar? And they might even try to persuade you, you like sugar. Sugar is good for you. Sugar is healthy for you. You know what? They sound so sure. They're using all these big words. Okay, fine. I like my coffee with sugar. You were right. They're doing that because they can't accept even the slightest bit of imperfection. Now, sometimes a narcissistic person who's very socially skilled knows how to admit to minor lovable, like foibles in their personality, like minor lovable flaws. I'm not so good at it. I'm not so good at accepting failure. So I always try to do things perfectly. Or, I'm not so great. I can't carry a tune. My singing voice is not great. Or, I'm not so artistic, so bear with me as I draw these not so artistic designs, because that's not part of their sense of self. So they know how to do that to signal, I am not narcissistic. Now, a little bit of healthy narcissism is okay in everybody. Everybody needs enough self-esteem to be able to say, no, you can't bully me. Yeah, I think my article is good enough to submit to a publication and see. Yeah, I think my college application is good enough to send into a college to see if I get accepted. That's healthy narcissism. Pathological narcissism is, I have no flaws. How dare you tell me I have a flaw? You are now an existential threat. So how can you persuade your narcissistic relative to take responsibility for some of the harmful things they did? You can't. So don't even try. So why do we try? For one very simple reason. Narcissists have a way of setting themselves up as the arbiters of reality. If they say something's good, it's good. If they say something's bad, it's bad. If they say a book was interesting, it's fascinating. If they say a movie was dumb, it's dumb, right? They are the ones who get to define what reality is. And very often you will see this in toxic family dynamics where there's a narcissistic person, where they simply decide, that person's the black sheep. That person's the loser of the family. That person's the pretty one of the family. That person's the golden child of the family. That person's job is just adoringly be my audience. And your job is to simply accept your role as it has been scripted to you. Now, because they're an arbiter of reality, they get everyone else to buy into their version of reality. So if they say that everybody knows that movie was boring and stupid, even if the entire world loves that movie, we're in the know. Our little in-group, we know that it's really stupid, right? Doesn't matter if the whole world loves it and it wins every single award in the world, but we know it's stupid because we're this in-group. We've bought into this arbiter of reality's reality, and that's why we try so hard to get the narcissist to see our version of events, because they've already set themselves up in our psyche as the arbiter of reality. So no matter who says, wow, how often does it happen to a post-traumatic parent that they come into a group like a post-traumatic parenting group, they'll post on Instagram or Facebook, they'll come into group therapy, they'll go into individual therapy, and they'll tell a story, and the person who's hearing the story says, wow, that is messed up. That is so not okay that that person did that to you. That's terrible. And okay, and it feels validating, it feels helpful, but still, until the arbiter of reality agrees that it was terrible, it doesn't feel real inside our psyche, because that narcissist set themselves up over so many years. They've trained everyone to see them as the arbiter of reality. So now it doesn't feel like reality, even if the therapist is the world's biggest expert on abuse and they are the world's acknowledged expert, and they say, yeah, that was abusive. It doesn't feel correct until the arbiter of reality, who is never going to do it because they're a narcissist and they don't take responsibility, it's never going to feel real. So when we name it, when we name this person is an arbiter of reality, and when we give them permission to never believe us, when we say in our own head, in our own psyche, arbiter of reality, you are never going to get it. You are the man behind the curtain, and you need to keep that curtain firmly closed so no one gets how weak and vulnerable you are deep down inside. And you will never take that responsibility because you're an arbiter of reality and you live in your own reality. That's when we start having freedom from it. When we don't try to persuade the narcissist of our worldview. Instead, we set a boundary, right? I will not be talked to that way. Very simple, right? Well, this is how I talk to people. Okay, but I will not be talked to that way. You can talk to other people that way if you should so choose. I will not be talked to that way. So if you talk to me that way, I'm going to hang up, right? I'm setting that boundary. That person uses certain language. Oh, you've always been a lazy, selfish person. I will not be talked to that way. Goodbye, right? So that we're going to a certain extent, whether we're going gray rock or I'm just not communicating with you at all. It's an option. Sometimes we vote with our feet, or we go to our rules for communication, right? I will not be spoken to in that manner. I do not want to hear that I'm selfish and lazy. You want to give me feedback about an actual situation that I've been in, I'm open to hearing feedback. I will not hear any characterological or personality descriptors. You want to pull me into your gossip little thing. I don't talk about people, I talk to people. So if you want to be the narcissist and you want to tell me about a different relative who is acting in a way that you don't approve of, I don't talk about people, I talk to people. And then I walk away because I'm not part of this conversation because I don't talk about people, I talk to people. So if I have a problem with what that relative did and I want to give her feedback, that's between me and that relative. But I'm not being part of your gossip little in-group club because now I'm suddenly in the in-group because you're the narcissist and you need to pull me in and keep me and breadcrumb me. So you're going to attach yourself to me by denigrating her. Nah, don't talk about people. I talk to people. So I'm not going to do that, right? I don't accept characterological descriptions. If you have an issue with a specific thing I did, stick to the facts, ma'am. What do you want to tell me about? Right? So the idea is I set the boundary of how I will and won't be communicated to. Will I ever persuade you that it's not okay to call me selfish and lazy? And you've been calling me selfish and lazy my whole life. And it has done tremendous damage to my psyche, damage that took me years of therapy to unpack. Am I going to persuade you of that? No, never going to persuade you of that. Right? Because you're just going to go down the path of Darvo, right? Deny, accuse, reverse victim and offender. Well, of course I called you lazy. Do you know what your laziness caused me? Do you know, right? You're just going to do that. Very often you'll see in a toxic family that the person who's doing most of the work is the one called selfish and lazy. It's a very common dynamic. You're never going to get the person who benefits, the person who doesn't have to do the work because that selfish, lazy person is doing all of it, to admit, agree, understand that, like, no, that's not what's happening. Because tell me where a man gets his cornbone, I'll tell you what his opinions are. It's not within his self-interest to acknowledge the truth. For the narcissistic person, in order to acknowledge the truth, they have to acknowledge that they're not perfect. That's the thing they've been defending against their whole entire life. Oh no, what if I'm not perfect? You know what? Humans aren't. You're not going to be. You're going to make mistakes. Sometimes you're going to have a wonderful day. Sometimes you're going to have a less wonderful day. That's called being a human. And we get better and better as life goes on and we work and we try to act in accordance with our values. We strengthen those muscles. But you're not perfect. But a narcissistic person has been so defended against feeling imperfect that when you try to make them feel imperfect, which is what you're doing, you're not really trying to make them feel imperfect. You just want them to take responsibility. Yeah. Shouldn't have called you those names all those years. It was wrong of me. That's all you're asking for. An acknowledgement. But to do that, they have to acknowledge they're imperfect. They've been defending against imperfection their whole entire life. They've had years and years and years to rehearse that response. You're not going to get them to undo it, and you don't need them to. Yes, they set themselves up as an arbiter of reality inside your psyche. Got it. They've set themselves up that way, and there's an inner child inside of you that will always see them as the arbiter of reality. What you need to say to that inner child is, inner child, I get it. I know you really think you need that person to give you that stamp of approval and to say, yes, I can now validate your view of reality. It's never going to happen, but that's okay because, hi, I'm adult you, And I see it. I see what you were struggling with when you were a little kid. I see what 11-year-old you felt. I see how not okay it was to make 14-year-old you feel this way. I am my own arbiter of reality. I have people I trust that I can vet my opinions with. I can talk to a romantic partner. I can talk to a really close friend. I can talk to a therapist. I can talk to an advisor of some sort to vet my boundaries, to vet my view of reality, to get some feedback from them about what they think about what I'm saying. Because unlike the narcissistic person, I want to hear other people's opinions. I want to learn and grow and be taught by someone who has a different perspective. So I'm going to vet my opinions, but I can be my own arbiter of reality. I know I didn't ask for sugar. I know I'm not selfish and lazy. I know that I am not a malicious person on purpose or whatever else, whatever other thing the narcissistic person wants to say. I know that. I can be my own arbiter of reality. Yes, inner 11-year-old, I get that you don't quite feel that yet. That's okay. I'm here for you. Adult me is here for you. And the more you can be your own arbiter of reality, the more you can also vet your reality by trusted, healthy people around you who share your values and who get it. The more the fact that the arbiter in reality of your childhood doesn't endorse your view of reality, the less threatening it becomes and the more comfortable we become exerting that skill. So how do I get a narcissist to see my viewpoint? You can't. How can I get you to accept that you can't and that that's okay? That's what we did in this video. So if you have any questions about dealing with narcissistic people in your life, comment below. I would love to answer them. I can shoot another video. If you wish this was more of a talk show format and you could ask questions as we're going along, that's what my subscriber community on Instagram is for, where you can actually ask specific post-traumatic parenting and post-traumatic person questions. So find us at Dr. Kozlowitz Psychology. And if you like really long form explorations of these topics and interviews with experts in this field of post-traumatic parenting, check out the Post-Traumatic Parenting Podcast, available wherever you get your podcasts. And please click subscribe below so you never miss another episode. Till next time.